Here's Yvette Cooper, so let's see what she has to say. This is the Foreign Secretary.
Thank you, Conference. It's an honour to be here this morning as Labour Foreign Secretary, just the second Labour woman Foreign Secretary, 18 years after the brilliant Margaret Beckett. And you know, 15 years ago, when I was Labour's shadow Foreign Secretary, the last world leader I met in that role was President Abbas in East Jerusalem. And 15 years on, the first world leader I met as Foreign Secretary was President Abbas in London. And the tragedy? We talked about the same things. The need for peace, the need for two states, the need for reform, and yet not only has so little changed, so much has got worse. Because, Conference, for many decades, the UK has pledged support for a two-state solution in the Middle East, but only recognised one of those states until now. And 7 days ago, I stood in the Great Chamber of the United Nations in New York, beneath the UN symbol of peace, to confirm the historic decision of the United Kingdom to recognise the state of Palestine. It's our manifesto promise, because statehood is the inalienable right of the Palestinian people, and recognition is the embodiment of our passionate belief that the only path to security and lasting peace for Israelis and Palestinians alike is two states living side by side. But let there be no doubt, there can and will be no role for Hamas terrorists in any future governance of Palestine. But this is a moment the world must seize. A spur, not a substitute for action. Because this summer's historic recognition decisions by the UK, France, Canada, Australia, Portugal and more, joining 150 states across the world, has been part of a crucial international process, where every state in the Arab League for the first time has now joined with the Palestinian Authority in the condemnation of Hamas for those barbaric attacks on October the 7th and the demand for them to relinquish all power in Gaza, and where Britain has joined with partners from across the globe, from the US to the Arab world, from Europe to the global south, working on practical frameworks and plans, not just for ceasefire, but for a just and lasting peace with two states at the heart. And at the United Nations last week, I saw a growing determination from countries across the globe that this intolerable suffering must end for children facing starvation while Israeli forces block food at the border, for the hostages and their families in anguish, a Gaza without Hamas, a Gaza without hunger, a Gaza rebuilt for the Palestinian people. And so now, with the demands of the world upon them, Hamas must end its abhorrent detention of hostages, the calculated cruelty that has split and traumatized families for nearly 2 years. And the Israeli government must end the moral obscenity of this campaign that has seen food, water and medicine denied and an unconscionable loss of human life, because Palestinian civilians should not have to go another day in fear and hunger. The hostages should not have to live another day in the darkness of captivity. No family should endure another loss. Enough is enough. The moment cannot be lost. The time for peace is now. And Conference, let me pay tribute to the tireless work of my predecessor to set out the pathway to recognition, restoring funds to UNRWA, support for the hostages, sanctions on Israeli ministers and on Hamas, restrictions on arms sales, but much more than that, the restoration of principles to our foreign policy and the restoration of Britain's voice on the world stage. Our Deputy Prime Minister, David Lammy. But you know, Conference, we spent 14 years in opposition, watching powerless as successive Tory governments trashed our reputation abroad, undermining investment and trade, shouting at friends and allies, and in 14 short months of Labour government, here's what we've worked to rebuild. 3 new trade deals with India, the US and the EU to boost jobs and investment here at home. A transformed relationship with Europe on security and defence. An ever stronger special relationship with the US. A new strategic approach on China. An unprecedented migration deal with France. Sanctions on Russian oligarchs. Action against Iran to prevent nuclear proliferation. Growth and development partnerships with the Global South. A new global clean power alliance to boost green energy, and thanks to the tireless leadership of our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, the restoration of trust and credibility in Britain's role abroad so that we can deliver for the British people at home. And Britain's engagement on the international stage matters now more than ever. The world faces sustained instability unlike anything we've seen for generations. The pace of technological change, climate change, migration, not seen in our lifetimes. Global uncertainty, new kinds of state and hybrid threats. And yet the institutions and laws that were supposed to protect order and sustain peace are now buckling under the strain. The very principles that underpin them under assault. The rule of law, respect for sovereignty and borders, respect for our common humanity, and for our shared obligation to fight poverty and persecution. All those values so precious to us now being undermined, but values that it falls to us to defend. Not just Labour values, core British values. Because our flag stands for something, and we know that global challenges won't be solved if we wait till they land on our own doorstep. From climate change to economic security, we need action worldwide to tackle our problems here at home. Nowhere is that more true than on migration. Where dangerous smuggling and trafficking gangs operate across borders, then governments need to cooperate across borders to bring them down. And when we fail to work internationally on the causes of migration or border controls, more people make perilous journeys and confidence in the whole system is lost. And that is why we will work globally on new returns agreements and returns hubs so that rules can be enforced. We will work with international partners to tackle the causes and manage support for refugees. And we've doubled support for Sudan, where millions are fleeing violence and famine. And we will provide new help for Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh who have fled persecution in Myanmar. And ahead of the 75th anniversary of the Refugee Convention, we will lead the international debate on reforming and ensuring that the global framework can respond to the changing crisis today. And Conference, 30 years on from the horrific use of rape and sexual violence in the war in Kosovo, we must also ensure that there is much stronger protection for women and girls in Sudan, Myanmar and other conflicts today. So let me warn all those responsible for orchestrating sexual violence that a reckoning will come for them, no matter how long it takes, as we demand an end to the use of rape as a weapon of war. And I am proud that this government, this Labour government, has pledged to tackle the national emergency of violence against women and girls, taken forward now by Jess Phillips and Shabana Mahmood. And I am determined that we now put that global emergency on violence against women and girls at the heart of our foreign policy too, because everyone has the right to live in freedom from fear. Conference, after the war in Kosovo and the Balkan crisis, we hoped we would not see war in Europe again. But 2 weeks ago, in the beautiful European city of Kyiv, I met up with 2 Ukrainian teenagers. They are brilliant ballroom dancers. They've won international prizes. And when Putin's troops first invaded their country, they escaped with their mums and came to live with us in Castleford. They practiced at the Airedale Methodist Hall. They even gave Ed a few post-Strictly tips. And last summer, they returned home. They train by day, but at night when the sirens go, like countless other families, they have to decide whether to sleep in the hallway or in the basement to hide from drones. This is a sovereign nation under unprovoked attack in Europe. Tens of thousands of Ukrainian children have been abducted, stolen from their parents. We've seen escalating attacks, including more than 600 drones and missiles targeting civilians this weekend alone. But Vladimir Putin should have learned by now, never underestimate the resilience of the Ukrainian people or the determination of their friends. Ukraine's security is our security. Ukraine's fight is our fight. As Ukraine stands firm against Russia, Britain stands firm with Ukraine. But you know, where President Zelensky and President Trump have called for talks on peace, Putin has sought only to escalate war. We've seen Russian drones over Poland and Romania, Russian fighter jets over Estonia, entering NATO airspace, reckless, dangerous provocation. So that is why our party stands firm in NATO under the leadership of our Defence Secretary, John Healey, an alliance which is vigilant and resolute. And make no mistake, if we need to confront planes in NATO airspace without permission, then we will do so, because this party should be very proud that in Ukraine's greatest time of need, President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people have had no better friends than our country, our government, and our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. But there is a choice between a Labour foreign policy rooted in our belief that strength at home depends on our partnerships abroad, and whatever chaotic right-wing ideology we end up facing at the next election, with politicians who are happy for us to surrender our national interests or slide into isolation. Because while we are standing up to Putin, Nigel Farage calls him the leader he most admires. While we are strengthening the NATO alliance, they trot out Russian propaganda claiming NATO caused the war. And while we opened our hearts and our homes to Ukrainian children, their policy is to turn them away. While we do new trade deals underpinned by international law, they want to rip up those rules and lose the jobs and investment we need. And while we work together to renew Britain, they tour the world seeking every opportunity to run our country down. Because unlike the plastic patriots in Reform, we in Labour are proud to be British, proud of our values, and we know what our flag really means. Ask those overseas what it means to them when they see the Union Jack or the St George's Cross, and you'll hear people in every continent talk with admiration about our royal family and our parliament, our heritage and our culture, our armed forces and our universities, the literature, music, film and sport that we've given the world, the British inventions that have changed history. But even more than that, they will tell you that our flags stand for justice, for fairness, for tolerance, and for decency. A flag on the side of an army truck that's meant the difference between life and death for people facing massacre in Sierra Leone or Kosovo. A flag on the side of a crate that's brought vaccines and medicine, food and water to those in desperate need. And a flag on the diplomatic table that means a trading partner you can trust and an ally who will never let you down. That is what our flag means to our friends around the world, the way our country comes together and not divided. And if anyone doesn't believe that, just think back 6 years to when the England's men's football team played a qualifying match in Kosovo and the players lined up for the national anthems. As God Save the Queen began to play, every Kosovan fan in the stadium held up a St. George's flag, and amid them all, a banner which read, "You gave us hope for freedom." And they waved our flag with pride. They applauded our anthem with warmth. They sang the name of our Queen because they remembered how Britain had stood with them. That is what our country stands for around the world. That is what we must always continue to be: a force for good, a force for peace, and a force for hope. Conference, thank you.